The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like an endless ocean of floating platforms, each one holding representatives from dozens of alien species. Light filtered through crystal ceilings, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floors. For 200 years, this chamber had been the heart of galactic civilization. Where the fate of trillions was decided, Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the human delegation's platform. Her gray uniform pressed and perfect, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She was 63 years old, and she had spent 40 of those years serving the Council. She had fought in 7 wars, lost friends on a dozen worlds, and watched humanity give everything it had to this alliance. Today, she felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Around her, alien faces watched from their platforms. The Velthari, with their 4 arms and skin like blue marble. The Morvani, shapeless masses of living gel that communicated through chemical signals. The Stellari beings of living crystal that sparkled like diamonds. The Crix, tall and thin with too many eyes. 37 species in all, each one looking down at the human delegation with expressions that ranged from boredom to open contempt. High Chancellor Zirith rose from his central platform. He was a massive insectoid creature, standing nearly 3 meters tall, his body covered in black chitin that gleamed under the lights. His compound eyes reflected Catherine's image 1,000 times over. "The Council has reached a decision regarding the human petition," Zirith announced, his voice clicking and buzzing through the translator. "The request for reduced taxation on human colony worlds is denied. Furthermore, the Council has voted to increase human contributions by 40%, effective immediately." Catherine felt Commander Samuel Grant stiffen beside her. Grant was her second in command, a man who had served with her for 20 years. He had scars on his hands from battles fought defending Council worlds, and she knew he was struggling to keep his composure. "High Chancellor," Catherine said. Keeping her voice calm, humanity already contributes more than any other species. Our soldiers make up 60% of the Council's military forces. Our engineers maintain your ships. Our doctors staff your hospitals. We have asked only for fair treatment in return." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Ambassador Threx of the Morvani oozed forward on his platform, his gelatinous body quivering as he spoke. "The humans are emotional, as always. You fail to understand your place in the Grand Order. Your species is young, barely civilized. You should be grateful we allow you to serve at all. Serve." Grant stepped forward, his voice tight with anger. "We have died for you. Millions of us. On every battlefield, from the Crix border to the Outer Rim. My son died defending a Morvani colony 3 years ago, while and you call it service." "Your son died fulfilling his species' purpose," Threx replied without emotion. "Humans are useful for war. It is your nature. Violent, aggressive, short-lived, these traits make you excellent soldiers. Accept this truth." Catherine put a hand on Grant's arm, holding him back. She looked around the chamber at the faces of the species humanity had protected, saved, and sacrificed for. She saw no gratitude, no respect, only the cold certainty that humans were tools to be used and discarded. She thought of her daughter, serving on a patrol ship near the frontier. She thought of the young men and women who signed up every year, full of hope and idealism, believing they were part of something greater. She thought of the memorial wall at Fleet Command, covered with names of humans who had died for species that considered them. Barely sentient, something broke inside Catherine Cole in that moment. Not her spirit, but the chains of duty and obligation that had bound her for 40 years. "I would like to address the Council," she said quietly. Zirith clicked his mandibles in what might have been a smile. "You have 2 minutes, Admiral." Catherine stepped to the edge of her platform. She reached up and removed the Council insignia from her collar, the small golden emblem that marked her as a servant of the Alliance. She held it up for everyone to see. For 200 years, humanity has been part of this Council. We joined as young species, eager to prove ourselves, hopeful that we could build something beautiful among the stars. We gave everything we had. Our technology, our medicine, our art, our blood. She paused, looking around the chamber. And in return, we receive this contempt, exploitation, the certainty that no matter how much we sacrificed, we would never be seen as equals. We would always be the useful barbarians, good for fighting and dying, but never worthy of respect. The chamber had gone silent. Even the usually noisy Crix delegates had stopped their constant shirt. Catherine dropped the insignia. It fell from her platform and tumbled down through the vast space of the chamber until it struck the floor far below with a small, clear sound that echoed like a bell, effective immediately. The United Human Coalition withdraws from the Galactic Council. All treaties are terminated. All military agreements are void. All trade partnerships are suspended. Human personnel will be evacuated from Council space within 30 standard days. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates shouted. Platforms swayed as their occupants rushed to the edges. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of voices in 100 languages. High Chancellor. Zareth raised his arms for silence. When the noise finally died down, he fixed his compound eyes on Catherine. We cannot do this. Humanity has obligations. Treaties signed in good faith. Good faith? Catherine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You have shown us exactly how much faith you have in humanity. We have learned the lesson well. If you leave as enemies of the Council. We leave as nothing. We will not be your enemies, but we will no longer be your servants. What you do with your galaxy is your concern. We will build our own future, among our own stars. She turned and walked toward the exit, Grant and the rest of the human delegation falling in behind her. At the door, she paused and looked back one final time. You have taken humanity's service for granted for 2 centuries. Now, you will learn what the galaxy looks like without us. I hope the lesson is not too painful. The doors closed behind her with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. In the council chamber, silence reigned. 37 species looked at each other, and for the first time in living memory, no one knew what to say. High Chancellor Zareth stared at the place where Catherine had stood. His compound eyes could see in spectrums humans could not imagine, could detect movements too fast for human perception. But he had not seen this coming. None of them had. Outside the council building, Catherine Cole walked through streets filled with aliens who did not yet know that their world had just changed forever. Grant walked beside her, his face troubled. What happens now? He asked. Catherine looked up at the stars, visible even through the planet's atmospheric dome. And we see what kind of future we can build without them. The human delegation's ship lifted off an hour later, leaving the council capital behind. As it broke through the atmosphere and jumped to faster-than-light travel, Catherine sat alone in her cabin, looking at a picture of her daughter. She had just changed the course of galactic history. She had no idea if she had made the right choice, but for the first time in 40 years, she felt free. 6 months passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy began to understand what it had lost. On Thesan Prime, an agricultural world that fed 12 star systems, Councillor Vera stood in a dying field. The crops around him were brown and withered, their leaves curling inward like the fingers of dying men. He was a tall Thesani, with green skin and large black eyes that could see the health of plants with a single glance. What he saw now filled him with dread. "How bad is it?" asked his assistant, a young female named Laura. 70% of the harvest will fail this season. Maybe more, but how? These are the hybrid crops. They never fail. Varys bent down and picked up a handful of dead soil. The hybrid crops were developed by human agricultural scientists. They require specific care, specific nutrients, specific timing. The humans took that knowledge with them when they left. He let the soil fall through his fingers like dark sand. We have the technical manuals, Laura said hopefully. We have the manuals. But we do not have the understanding. Humans did not just follow instructions. They understood the why behind everything they did. They could adapt, improvise, solve problems we did not even know existed. That is what we have lost. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 1,000 worlds, in the Corthax Nebula. A Velthari science vessel floated dead in space. Its jump drive failed. The crew of 300 sent desperate distress signals, but help was days away. Human engineers had maintained these complex systems for generations, their nimble fingers and creative minds keeping ships running long past their expected lifespans. Now, the ships were breaking down. No one knew how to fix them. On the Morvani homeworld, hospitals struggled to treat patients. Human doctors had developed treatments for diseases that had plagued alien species for millennia. Human nurses had staffed clinics in the poorest regions, working long hours for little recognition. Without them, the sick went untreated and the dying died alone. The council tried to fill the gaps. They reassigned workers, wrote new training programs, and issued orders for increased productivity. But humans had done more than just fill positions. They had brought something unique to every task they performed, a combination of creativity, adaptability, and sheer determination that no other species could match. And then the Dreth came. The Dreth hegemony had always lurked at the edge of council space, a brutal empire of warriors who conquered and enslaved. For 2 centuries, human fleets had kept them at bay, fighting battle after battle along the border, always winning, always pushing them back. The Dreth had learned to fear human ships, human tactics, human soldiers who fought with a ferocity that seemed to come from somewhere deep in their souls. Now the humans were gone, and the Dreth sensed weakness. The first attack came on a small colony world called Varith Station. 3 Dreth warships appeared without warning and destroyed the orbital defenses in minutes. They landed troops, slaughtered the population, and stripped the planet of resources. By the time council forces arrived, there was nothing left but ashes and bones. High Chancellor Xyrith convened an emergency session of the council. "We must respond with force," declared Admiral Corvus of the Stellari, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "The Dreth cannot be allowed to think us weak." "Respond with what force?" asked Ambassador Threx, his gelatinous body rippling with fear. "Human ships made up 60% of our military. Human commanders led our fleets. Human soldiers held our front lines. What do we have left?" Silence fell over the chamber. "We must contact the humans," Xyrith said finally. "They have a duty to protect council space." "They have no duty," Corvus replied. "We made certain of that when we drove them away. The treaties are void. We did this to ourselves." On Earth, Secretary General Catherine Cole sat in her office watching the news from council space. She was not surprised. She had known this moment would come from the day she removed her insignia in the council chamber. Her aide, Lieutenant Daniel Hayes, entered with a tablet displaying the latest intelligence reports. He was a young man with kind eyes and a quick mind, one of the new generation of humans who had never served the council and did not carry the scars of those who had. "The Dreth have taken 3 more systems," Hayes reported. "The council fleet attempted to respond, but their coordination is falling apart without our command networks. They lost 12 ships in their first engagement. Casualties? Estimated 2 million Velthari civilians in the conquered systems. The Dreth are not taking prisoners." Athran closed her eyes. Even now, even after everything the council had done, it was hard not to feel the old pull of duty. Those were innocent people dying out there, beings who had never participated in the politics that had driven humanity away. Her husband, retired General Marcus Cole, entered the office. He was 70 now, his hair white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were still sharp. They had been married for 40 years, had raised 2 children together, had supported each other through every crisis and triumph. "You're thinking about going back," he said. It was not a question. "I'm thinking about what happens if we don't." Marcus sat down across from her. "The council treated us like animals for 200 years. They called us barbarians, took our children for their wars, and never gave us a moment of respect. And now they want us to come save them? They haven't asked yet. They will. Catherine looked out the window at the city below. New Geneva was beautiful in the autumn, the trees changing colors, the streets full of people living their lives in peace. For the first time in 2 centuries, human children were not being sent to die on foreign battlefields. Human families could plan for the future without wondering if their loved ones would come home. I know what they did to us, she said quietly. I remember every insult, every injustice, every friend I buried. But Marcus, there are billions of innocent people out there. Children, families, beings who never asked for any of this. Can we really just watch them die? The question is not whether we can watch them die. The question is whether our children should die to save them. Catherine had no answer for that. 2 weeks later, the council's official request for aid arrived. It was written in formal, diplomatic language, full of empty phrases and qualified statements. It promised nothing and asked for everything. Catherine read it 3 times. Then she called a meeting of the coalition cabinet. They want us back, she told the assembled ministers. They want our ships, our soldiers, our engineers, our doctors. They want everything we took away from them.
Right.
And what do they offer in return? Asked Defense Minister Carol Peters, a stern woman who had lost her son in the council's wars. Nothing specific. They talk about renewed partnership and mutual respect, but there are no concrete terms. Then we refuse, Peters said flatly. Let them learn what it means to stand alone. But Foreign Minister Benjamin Torres shook his head. He was a diplomat by training, a man who had spent his career finding compromise in impossible situations. If the Dreth conquer Council space, they won't stop there. Sooner or later they'll come for us. Better to fight them now, with allies, than later, alone. The debate went on for hours. In the end, Catherine made the only decision she could. We will negotiate. We will not surrender our dignity or our principles. But we will talk. The negotiations began, but they did not go well. The council wanted human help without offering anything meaningful in return. They could not let go of their belief that humans were lesser beings who should be grateful to serve. After 3 weeks, Catherine ended the talks. You have learned nothing, she told High Chancellor Zyrith in their final meeting. You still see us as tools to be used. Until that changes, there is nothing more to discuss. She returned to Earth, and humanity watched as the galaxy burned. 1 year after humanity left the Galactic Council, High Chancellor Zyrith came to Earth. It was a journey he never thought he would make. In all his centuries of life, he had never lowered himself to visit a lesser species on their homeworld. But these were desperate times. Desperate times required desperate measures. His ship descended through gray autumn clouds toward New Geneva, the human capital. He looked out the viewport at the city below, a sprawling metropolis of towers and parks, rivers and bridges. It was beautiful in a way he had not expected, full of the same creativity and energy that humans brought to everything they did. The landing pad was surrounded by human soldiers in crisp uniforms, their faces hard and watchful. These were not the eager young recruits who had served the council. These were veterans, men and women who had learned exactly how the galaxy had treated their people. Secretary General Catherine Cole waited at the bottom of the landing ramp. She wore civilian clothes now, a simple gray suit that somehow made her look more powerful than any military uniform ever had. Beside her stood Admiral Samuel Grant, scarred hands clasped behind his back. Zyrith descended the ramp with 11 other council representatives, including Ambassador Threx of the Morvani and Admiral Corvus of the Stellar. It was the largest diplomatic mission in council history, sent to beg help from a species they had spent 2 centuries despising. High Chancellor, Catherine said, her voice polite but cold. Welcome to Earth, Secretary General Cole. Thank you for receiving us. She led them through the city to the Hall of Nations, a grand building designed in the human classical style. The corridors were lined with paintings and sculptures depicting human history, from ancient wars to the first steps on other worlds. Zyrith found himself studying these images with new interest. Seeing a story of struggle and triumph he had never bothered to learn. The meeting chamber was designed for human proportions. forcing the alien delegates to squeeze into seats built for smaller bodies. Xyrith understood the message. On Earth, humans set the terms. "Let us not waste time with pleasantries," Catherine began, once everyone was seated. "You are here because the Dreth are destroying your civilization, and you cannot stop them. You want human help. The question is, what you are willing to offer in return." Xyrith had prepared for this moment. He had practiced speeches about mutual respect and shared destiny, about the bonds forged through 2 centuries of cooperation. But looking at Catherine's face, at the faces of the humans around her, he knew that pretty words would not be enough. "We are prepared to restore humanity's full membership in the Council," he said. "With all rights and privileges that entails. That is what we had before. It was not enough. It will reduce the taxation on human colonies to original levels. Still not enough." Threx's gelatinous form quivered with impatience. "What do you want from us?" "We are offering you everything we took away," Admiral Grant laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You took away our dignity," he said. "You took away our sons and daughters and sent them to die in your wars. You took away 2 centuries of our future. How exactly do you plan to give that back?" Silence fell over the chamber. Catherine stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city continued its daily life. Children played in parks. Families walked along riverbanks. Old couples sat on benches and watched the world go by. It was a scene of peace and normalcy that would have been impossible during the Council years, when every human family lived with the fear of the next draft, the next war, the next letter telling them their loved one would not be coming home. "Let me tell you what has happened since we left," she said. Without turning around, in 1 year, we have colonized 12 new systems. We have developed 3 new forms of energy production that are cleaner and more efficient than anything the Council has ever created. Our population has grown because our young people are no longer dying in foreign wars. Our scientists have made breakthroughs in medicine, in physics, in every field of knowledge. Do you know why?" She turned to face the alien delegates. "Because for the first time in 200 years, we are not being held back. We are not being told that we are too young, too primitive, too aggressive. We are not being forced to give our best minds and strongest bodies to serve species that hate us. We are free to be ourselves, and it turns out that ourselves is something remarkable." High Chancellor Xyrith felt something shift in his understanding. He had always thought of humans as useful servants, valuable for their fighting ability but otherwise unremarkable. Now he began to see how wrong he had been. "What would it take," he asked quietly, "to bring humanity back?" Catherine returned to her seat. "Full equality. Not membership with rights and privileges granted by the Council. True equality, written into the fundamental laws of galactic civilization. 1 species, 1 vote. No more tiers of membership. No more lesser species and greater species. Every being equal under the law." "Impossible," Threx said immediately. "The Council's structure has existed for 10,000 years. We cannot change it for 1 species. Then you cannot have our help. You would let billions die. You let billions of our people die over 2 centuries. You called it service. You called it duty. You called it the natural order of things. Now you ask us to sacrifice more of our children to save you, and you cannot even treat us as equals." Catherine shook her head. "No, we will not return to the way things were. If you want human help, you must accept human terms. Full equality or nothing." The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. Every day, news came from Council space of new Dreth advances, new worlds conquered, new populations enslaved or destroyed. Every day, the pressure on the alien delegates grew, and every day. They found themselves unable to accept what humanity was asking. It was not that they wanted to refuse. Many of them had come to understand, in their time on Earth, how badly they had treated humans. They had seen the human capacity for art and science, for kindness and courage. For all the things they had denied existed in these useful barbarians, but 10,000 years of tradition could not be overturned in 3 weeks. The Council delegates did not have the authority to make such fundamental changes, even if they had wanted to, and many of the species they represented would never accept humans as equals, no matter how desperate the situation became. On the final day, Catherine met with Xyrith alone in a small garden behind the Hall of Nations. Autumn leaves fell around them as they walked, and the air was cool and clean. "I wish things were different," Xyrith said. "I have learned much in my time here. I have seen your people, your culture, your world. I was wrong about humanity." "We were all wrong. Knowing you were wrong is not the same as making things right." "No, it is not." They walked in silence for a time. "The Dreth will not stop with the Council," Xyrith said finally. "You know this. Once they have conquered our space, they will turn their eyes toward Earth. We know, and yet you will not help us." Catherine stopped and faced him. In the soft light of the autumn afternoon, she looked tired and sad, and very, very human. "We cannot save you by becoming what you wanted us to be. We cannot sacrifice our future on the altar of your past. If humanity is to help the galaxy, it must be as equals, or not at all." Xyrith nodded slowly. "Then this is goodbye. For now." The Council delegation left Earth the next day. As their ship rose through the atmosphere, Xyrith looked down at the blue and green world below, and he wondered if he would ever see it again. Behind him, on that beautiful world, humanity watched the stars and waited for what would come next. 3 years after humanity left the Galactic Council, the galaxy had become a place of darkness and fear. The Dreth hegemony had swallowed 47 systems. Their warships moved through space like sharks through water, hunting for prey, destroying everything they could not use. The Morvani homeworld had fallen in a battle that lasted 3 days and ended with the extinction of half their species. Ambassador Threx, who had once called humans barely sentient, had died defending a hospital full of children. The Velthari were scattered across a dozen refugee camps, their ancient civilization reduced to memories and ruins. The Thessani starved as their crops continued to fail. The Stellari flickered dimly, their crystal forms damaged by radiation from destroyed ships. Slowly dying in the cold between stars, what remained of the Galactic Council had retreated to the Stellari home system, protected by the last remnants of their combined fleets. It was a small force, barely enough to slow the Dreth advance, certainly not enough to stop it. High Chancellor Xyrith stood on the observation deck of the Council's last stronghold, watching the stars. 3 years ago, he had thought himself powerful, the leader of a galactic civilization that had endured for 10,000 years. Now, he was nothing but an old insectoid waiting for death. Admiral Corvus joined him, his crystalline form dim and cracked from the wounds he had received in the Battle of Vorni Station. He moved slowly now, each step causing him pain. "The scouts report the main Dreth fleet has entered the system," Corvus said. "They will be here within 6 standard days." "How many ships?" "Over 3,000. We have 247. Arith nodded. He had known for months that this day would come. He had hoped foolishly that something would change, that some miracle would save them. But miracles did not come to those who had earned their fate. "Prepare for evacuation of civilian populations," he ordered. "Send them toward the outer rim. Perhaps some will escape." "And the military? We will stay. We will fight. We will die with whatever honor we have left." Corvus was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, "I have served the Council for 600 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I never thought I would see ours end like this. Neither did I, far away on Earth." Admiral Samuel Grant stood on the bridge of the starship Endeavor and studied the tactical display, showing the Dreth advance. The ship was the pride of the human fleet, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and filled with the best crew humanity had to offer. Lieutenant Commander Michelle Torres, his tactical officer, handed him the latest report. She was a small woman with dark hair and quick eyes, one of the finest minds in the fleet. "The Dreth will reach Council Prime in 6 days," she said. "Maybe less if they push hard. And after that, the Council ceases to exist. The Dreth will control everything from the core worlds to the outer rim." Grant rubbed his face with his scarred hands. He was 62 years old now, and he felt every year of it. His son had died fighting for the Council 12 years ago. His wife had passed away from grief 3 years later. He had nothing left but the fleet and the people who served in it. "What about Earth?" he asked. "The Dreth will consolidate their gains first, build up their forces, strip the conquered worlds of resources. Best estimate they'll be ready to move against human space in 2 to 3 years. So we have 2 years of peace, and then we face them alone." "Yes, sir." Grant stared at the display, at the little dots representing the last Council fleet, surrounded by the vast swarm of Dreth warships. In 6 days, those dots would disappear, and billions of beings would die or be enslaved. He thought about his son, a bright young man who had believed in the ideals of the Council even when the Council itself betrayed them. He remembered the last letter his son had written, found in his personal effects after the battle that killed him. The letter had said, "Dad, I know they do not appreciate us, but that is not why we fight. We fight because it is who we are. We fight because someone has to stand between the darkness and the people who cannot defend themselves. Even if they never thank us, even if they never understand, we fight because that is what it means to be human." Grant had carried that letter for 12 years. He carried it now, in his breast pocket, close to his heart. He opened a secure channel to Earth. "This is Admiral Grant. Request permission to speak freely." Catherine's hologram appeared on the bridge. She looked older than he remembered, her hair fully white now, her face lined with the weight of leadership. But her eyes were still sharp, still fierce. Still the eyes of the woman who had told the entire galaxy that humanity would no longer kneel. "Go ahead, Samuel." "Katie, we need to talk about what happens when the Dreth finish with the Council. You think they will come for us next?" "I know they will. And I think you know what we need to do." Catherine was silent for a long moment. Grant waited, watching her face, seeing the struggle playing out behind her eyes. Finally, she spoke. "Assemble the War Council. All fleet commanders, all cabinet ministers, all military advisors. We meet at midnight, Earth time." "Yes, ma'am." The channel closed, and Grant turned to face his bridge crew. They were watching him, waiting, knowing that something important had just happened. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The Endeavor turned toward home, and behind it, the darkness continued to spread. On Earth, Catherine Cole sat alone in her office as night fell over New Geneva. The city lights sparkled below her window like earthbound stars. Millions of people living their lives in peace. Not knowing that their leader was about to make the hardest decision of her life, her husband Marcus entered without knocking. After 40 years of marriage, some formalities had long since disappeared. "The cabinet is gathering," he said. "They're confused, scared. They should be." Marcus sat down across from her. His old soldier's eyes saw what others missed, the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her mouth. "You have made your decision," he said. "I've been making it for 3 years. I just did not want to admit it. Tell me." Catherine looked at him. At this man who had stood beside her through everything, who had supported her when she walked away from the Council, who had loved her even when the weight of worlds pressed down on her shoulders. "I cannot watch them die," she said simply. "I know what they did to us. I remember every injustice, every insult, every child we sent to die in their wars. But there are innocent people out there, Marcus. Children who never asked for any of this. Families who never participated in the politics that hurt us. I cannot save ourselves by becoming the monsters they thought we were." Marcus nodded slowly. "You want to go back? I want to help. Not as servants. Not as tools. As humans. As ourselves, the Council will not accept our terms, and we will not ask for their permission." At midnight, the War Council assembled in the Strategic Command Center beneath the Capitol. Admirals and generals, ministers and advisors. The leadership of human civilization. Gathered around the great table that displayed the state of the galaxy, Catherine entered last. She stood at the head of the table and looked at the faces of the men and women who would decide humanity's future. In 6 days, the Galactic Council will fall. The Dreth will control everything from the core to the rim, and then they will come for us. She touched a control, and the display shifted to show Earth and its colonies. A small cluster of light surrounded by the vast darkness of Dreth-controlled space. We have two choices. We can wait here, build our defenses, and hope that we are strong enough to resist when they finally arrive. Or we can act now, while there is still something left to save. Defense Minister Carol Peters spoke first. You want to save the Council? After everything they did to us? I want to save the innocent people who are about to die. I want to stop the Dreth before they become unstoppable. And yes, I want to show the galaxy what humanity truly is. And what is that? Catherine looked around the table at the faces watching her. We are not monsters. We are not tools. We are not the useful barbarians they thought we were. We are human beings, and human beings do not let innocents die when they have the power to help. The debate lasted until dawn. In the end, the vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would return to the stars, not as servants, not as soldiers for hire, but as themselves, fighting for what they believed was right. Admiral Grant received his orders as the sun rose over the Pacific. Mobilize the entire fleet, Catherine told him. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we can spare. We have 6 days to save a galaxy that never wanted to be saved. Grant smiled. The first real smile in years. About time, he said. The Dreth Armada surrounded Council Prime like a noose around a condemned prisoner's neck. 3,000 warships blocked out the stars, their weapons charged, their commanders eager for the final kill. After 3 years of conquest, the greatest prize was finally within their grasp. On the surface of Council Prime, High Chancellor Xyrith stood in the ruins of the Great Assembly Hall. The crystal ceiling had been shattered by orbital bombardment, and rainbow shards lay scattered across the floor like tears. Around him, the surviving representatives of the Galactic Council waited for the end. There were not many left. Admiral Corvus, barely able to stand, his crystalline form held together by sheer willpower. A handful of Velthri diplomats who had nowhere else to go. A few Thessoni farmers who had fled their dying world. The last remnants of a civilization that had stood for 10,000 years. The Dreth flagship is beginning its final approach, reported a young Velthri officer. Her voice steady, despite the fear in her eyes. They will be in bombardment range within the hour. Arith nodded. He had made his peace with death long ago. What hurt was not the dying, but the knowing. Knowing that this was the end of everything his people had built. Knowing that the galaxy would fall into darkness, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. It is fitting, murmured Admiral Corvus, that we should die alone. We drove away the only species that might have saved us, and now we will face the consequences. Xyrith could not argue. He had spent 3 years regretting his arrogance, watching everything crumble because he had been too proud to see humans as equals. Now that pride would cost him everything. The Dreth flagship moved closer. It was a massive vessel, black as night, covered in weapons that gleamed with deadly promise. On its bridge, Admiral Vreth of the Dreth hegemony watched his victory approach with cold satisfaction. Signal the Council, he ordered. Tell them to surrender, and we will make their deaths quick. Resist, and we will make them examples for the rest of the galaxy. His communications officer sent the message. The response came back within minutes. He refused to surrender. Wrath clicked his teeth in amusement. Brave, foolish, but brave. Prepare for orbital bombardment. We will reduce their cities to ash, and their people to memories. The Dreth weapons began to charge, gathering energy for the killing blow, and then the universe shuddered. Space itself seemed to tear open, as jump points activated across the system. Not one or two, but hundreds, thousands. Points of light blazed into existence like a constellation being born. And from each one emerged ships. Human ships. The fleet that entered the Stellari system was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen assembled in one place. Dreadnoughts, the size of small moons, their hulls bristling with weapons. Carriers launching swarms of fighters that spread across space like silver rain. Destroyers and cruisers and battleships moving in perfect formation. Every crew trained to perfection. Every commander ready for war. At the head of the fleet, the Starship Endeavour broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Samuel Grant of the United Human Coalition. To the Dreth hegemony, you have committed acts of genocide and conquest against species under human protection. You will withdraw from the system immediately or face the consequences. On Council Prime, Xyrith's legs nearly gave out beneath him. He stared at the sky, at the thousands of human ships that had appeared from nowhere, and he felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Hope. They came back, he whispered. After everything we did, they came back. Admiral Varoth stared at his tactical display with something approaching disbelief. The human fleet outnumbered his own 2-1, and human ships were famously superior in combat. But he was a Dreth warrior, and Dreth warriors did not retreat. All ships, engage the human fleet, he ordered. We will crush them, and then finish the council. This changes nothing. The Dreth armada turned to face the newcomers, weapons firing, fighters launching. 3,000 ships moving to battle. They had never fought humans who were not holding back. For 200 years, human forces had served the council under strict rules of engagement. They had been told when to fight and when to stop, what weapons to use and what tactics to employ. They had won their battles with one hand tied behind their backs, always held in check by masters who feared their full potential. Now, there were no rules. Now, there were no limits. Now humanity fought as humanity truly could. Admiral Grant watched from the Endeavor's bridge as his fleet engaged the enemy. Human ships moved in patterns the Dreth had never seen, coordinating with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Human weapons fired with devastating accuracy, each shot finding its target. Each volley tearing holes in the Dreth formation. Lieutenant Commander Torres called out reports as the battle progressed. Enemy flagship losing shields. Third, Dreth squadron in retreat. Our carrier wing has achieved space superiority in the inner system. All right. Grant nodded, his face calm despite the chaos unfolding around him. This was what humans were made for. Not service, not submission, but this. The terrible beauty of war waged by those who understood it. Better than any other species in the galaxy, the battle lasted for hours at the end. The Dreth armada was scattered wreckage, debris fields floating through space where 3,000 warships had been. Admiral Vroth's flagship had been boarded by human marines and captured. Its commander taken prisoner by a 26-year-old sergeant named Amy Crawford from Kansas who had never left Earth until a year ago, as the last Dreth ships fled into hyperspace. Admiral Grant opened a channel to Council Prime. Hi, Chancellor Xyrith. This is Admiral Grant. You may stand down from emergency protocols. The threat has been neutralized. Xyrith heard the message, but he could not respond. He was weeping, something his species rarely did. Tears flowing from his compound eyes as he watched. Human shuttles begin their descent toward the ruined city. Grant's shuttle landed in the plaza, before the shattered assembly hall. The Admiral descended the ramp slowly, his scarred hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face showing no emotion. Behind him came a squad of human marines, their weapons holstered but ready. Xyrith walked forward to meet him. The two old warriors stood face to face, human and insectoid, conqueror and conquered. Admiral Grant Xyrith began, his voice thick with emotion. I do not know how to express what this means. You saved us. After everything we did, after the way we treated your people, you came back and you saved us. Yes. Why? We did not deserve your help. We did not even ask for it this time. Grant looked around at the shattered city, at the survivors beginning to emerge from shelters, at the human medics already setting up field hospitals to treat the wounded. He thought of his son, buried on a world that no longer existed. He thought of the letter he still carried, the words he had read 1,000 times. We did not come back for gratitude, he said finally. We did not come back because you deserved it or because you asked. We came back because watching you die would not have made us better. It would have made us like you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a data tablet, which he handed to Xyrith. These are the terms of humanity's return to galactic affairs. Full equality for all species. Voting rights based on population and contribution. An end to the system that treated some beings as lesser than others. The old council is dead. What rises from its ashes is up to you. Xyrith read the document. It was everything humanity had asked for 3 years ago, everything the Council had refused to give. It would remake the galaxy from the ground up. And if we refuse, then we go home, and you rebuild alone. But we will not watch you die, and we will not become the monsters you thought we were. That is not who we are. Zereth looked at the human admiral, at the lines on his face, the gray in his hair, the weight of command in his eyes. He saw something he had never noticed before in all his centuries of dealing with humans. He saw people who chose to be better than their circumstances demanded. People who had every right to hate, but chose to help instead. People who had been told they were barbarians, and proved themselves more civilized than those who insulted them. "We accept," Zyrith said. Grant nodded, and for the first time, the ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Then let us begin." 10 years later, the Galactic Union held its annual assembly in a newly built hall on Council Prime. The chamber was designed differently now. All species on the same level, no floating platforms to separate the greater from the lesser. Humans sat among the other representatives, equals at last. Secretary General Emeritus Catherine Cole, now in her 70s, watched the proceedings from the visitors' gallery. Her granddaughter, Lieutenant Caroline Cole, sat beside her. Carolyn wore the silver insignia of the Union Peacekeeping Force, a joint service that drew members from every species. "Grandmother," Carolyn asked quietly, "do you ever regret it? Going back?" Catherine smiled. It was a warm smile, the smile of a woman who had made peace with her choices. "Every day I wonder if we made the right decision. And every day I see humans and aliens working together, building something better than what came before. So no, I do not regret it. But they did not deserve our help. No, they did not. But we were not helping them because of what they deserved. We were helping them because of who we are." Catherine looked out at the assembly chamber, at the representatives of 100 species working together, at the future taking shape before her eyes. Humanity left the Council, and the universe shuddered. But when we came back, we did not come back as servants or soldiers. We came back as equals, and that made all the difference. Caroline nodded slowly, understanding at last what her grandmother had known all along. True strength was not about winning battles or conquering enemies. True strength was about having the power to destroy and choosing to build instead. Outside the assembly hall, the stars burned on, endless and eternal. But the people who traveled between them were no longer divided by ancient prejudices and outdated hierarchies. They were united, finally, in the understanding that every species had value. Every life had meaning, and the galaxy was better when they worked together. Humanity had shown them that. Not through force, not through war, but through a simple truth that had taken 10,000 years to learn. The measure of a civilization was not how it treated those who could help it, but how it treated those who could not in humanity. Once despised, once dismissed, once called barbarians and servants and useful tools, had taught the galaxy what it truly meant to be civilized. The universe had shuddered when humans left. When they returned, began to heal.